Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all for today's event. My name is Nixon, and I'll be your MC for tonight. As a managing director at Forces, I partner with our customers to accelerate their digital transformation and AI adoption, delivering strategic solutions for their innovation, efficiency, and business growth. We are here to discuss how AI is transforming healthcare at the enterprise level. AI is no longer a concept. It's actively driving innovation, improving patient care, and shaping the business strategies across healthcare and life science companies. Tonight is about more than just discussing technology. It's about understanding how AI can create a real business value in healthcare, and what it means for leaders, innovators, and decision makers in this space. We have a valuable program lined up for you tonight. We are just 10 minutes behind, but we're going to be good catch up with that. First, we'll hear from Dr. Anurag Marial. Follow that, our panel of industry leaders will discuss real-world applications and the future outlook for AI healthcare enterprise. Quick note on logistics. We'll have a Q&A session after the panel. I kindly request everyone to stay for the dinner and more networking, because some of the best insights you get networking with your peers and industry leaders. With that, let's dive into our first session. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anurag Meral, Director of Global Outreach Program at Stanford University. He's an innovator, entrepreneur, and educator who will discuss how AI is driving innovation in the healthcare ecosystem and what that means for the future of the industry. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anurag to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me. Just a minor typo that there is an A there, Meral. My last name is Meral, but that's all right. So this is my home turf. I'm a professor here at Stanford School of Medicine and work on health technology innovation, part of a Center for Biodesign and Center for Innovation in Global Health. Center for Biodesign is really focused on health technology innovation, so teaching innovators, faculty members, researchers, students, but also industry professionals on how to approach innovation in healthcare with unmet needs first. So needs-driven innovation is the term that we use. And then the other role I have is with Center for Innovation in Global Health, which is really healthcare innovation for the 5 billion people in the world out of 8 that do not have meaningful access to care. And many of those people are right here. We count about 100 million people in the US that fall within that category. Women's health is underserved. Pediatric health is underserved. And there are a lot more, if you really look, the communities and groups that are underserved in our healthcare system, despite the fact that we spend how much, 18% now, 18.5% of our GDP on healthcare. So the question really is, how do we overcome those challenges of providing meaningful access to healthcare to everyone, not just 3 billion who live in global north, but also 5 billion who live in global south. That's a question that I deal with at Center for Innovation Global Health. I didn't want this to be a presentation. I have no slides. I would like this to be a conversation. So please, I'll do maybe opening remarks next 5-7 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I would love to actually engage you all. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you are in healthcare? Okay. And how many of you consider yourselves to be innovators in healthcare? Okay. I would like all hands to be raised. And the reason for that is that we often think of ourselves as users of healthcare. If we are part of an enterprise, a healthcare enterprise in particular, we think about healthcare as this static sort of framework where we have established health, care pathways, established protocols around healthcare, existing technologies, and we say we're going to use them, and we're going to try to do the best we can. Where operationally we'll maximize the outcomes. The challenge with that is that it ignores all of the major evolutions that are happening in our technological landscape, and artificial intelligence right here is one of them. How many of you are working on AI or have exposure to AI? Or let me start from the basics, actually. How many of you used an AI tool? ChatGPT, show of hands. I hope all of you. There are now a plethora of these generative AI tools, so it really has become a major sort of evolution in AI. I mean, just in the 10 years that machine learning, deep learning has become the modality by which artificial intelligence is done. It's really created this movement that has led to what has happened in the last 2 years. It's nothing short of extraordinary. And when you have conversations with folks that are developing AI, algorithms and LLM models and reasoning models, one thing I hear constantly, whether it's OpenAI leadership or Perplexity folks or any of them, the one common refrain from all of them is that healthcare is going to be one of biggest use cases for them. So if you think about AI, what's going on today, it's really laying out the roads, the electricity poles, the undersea cables, things of that sort. That's what is going on with AI right now. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been invested in AI and will continue to be invested in the next 5, 7, maybe 10 years, in that infrastructure building. But it very quickly will give way to use cases. And ROI on all the investment that we see today will only come from use cases like healthcare. Healthcare is going to be one of the biggest ones. And why is healthcare one of the biggest use cases for AI? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, there are a lot of challenges in healthcare that we don't solve today, right? Unless there was an unmet need, unless there was a gap, unless there was a challenge, we wouldn't be able to use new tools, right? I mean, if everything is going well, why do you need AI as a tool? So that's one comment. The second one is that, healthcare traditionally has been lagging in leveraging technology. I mean, if you go back to the times when Epic and Cerner came up with their, patient, management systems and patient records, PMRs, it was actually a push. It was a push from the payers for the hospitals to use those. Nobody liked it. Doctors didn't like it. Patients didn't like it. Even today, how many of you like the EMR systems you see in the hospital, where the doctor is sort of entering data? Well, nowadays, they're using voice prompts, but even that's not as efficient. How many of you like the fact that the 7 minutes or 10 minutes that you spend with the doctor, half of that goes into entering data? Nobody, right? Nobody likes it. Does it improve patient care? No. Does it improve outcomes? Not really. What it does is that it helps the payers get the data that they need to make appropriate decisions around how much to cover and where the expenses are and so on. So it's more of a process tool. It's more of a benefit to one group of stakeholders at the expense of all the other stakeholders. And that is the challenge that we see. We see that technological tools that have been used in healthcare have really served the needs of a few, precious few, at the expense of folks that really healthcare is for, which is patients. So we're starting to see this flip. I call it flipping of the healthcare pyramid, if you will. In 20s, 30s, 40s, most of the healthcare was provided in our communities, at homes. I grew up in India, and we had a Dr. Jan in our neighborhood who basically provided 90% of my healthcare needs. I don't remember maybe I remember two or three times going to the hospital. Dr. Jan knew my clinical history. He knew my family background. He knew, when did I fall last time? So there was a personalized care that existed, even in the US in 20s, 30s, 40s. And ironically, it was the technology that took that care from home setting, community setting, to big institutions like Stanford Hospital, right? Where more and more machines, CT scanners, MRIs, and so on, and cath labs and so on, for more advanced care, of course. So for certain kinds of conditions, you absolutely need to go to the hospital. But we also start sending people with cough and cold to these big hospitals. So we moved away from home-based or community-based care to this institutional care, thanks to technology, ironically. Did the patient outcomes increase? Yeah, for advanced conditions, yes, they did. But for some of the most basic conditions, it didn't, actually. Patient satisfaction went down, outcomes were similar, costs went up. Thankfully, we are now entering an era, thanks to AI and thanks to other technological tools that AI will ride on to bring that care back to homes and communities. So that's the promise that we see. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take, in my opinion, at least 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, to really see full transition. I call it flipping of the healthcare pyramid, right? One simple experiment I ask folks to do when I'm speaking is, if you think of a healthcare pyramid where tertiary care at the very top and primary care at the bottom, where are most of the personnel? Where are most of the technologies? Where is most of the infrastructure? Where is most of the money being allocated? And the top of the pyramid. Where are most of the patients, though? In the primary care setting. So if you think about where the healthcare can go, not just for global north, right here in our own communities, but also for global south. Should global south follow the way of the global north, which they are trying to? No, it's not the right model. Flipping of the healthcare pyramid would be the way that you create a lot of value. And that is why OpenAI is saying that 30% of their ROI is going to come from healthcare. They know that there are big challenges, and they know there's a huge opportunity. So that's really the future we are talking about. But we're not going to get there right away. We're going to take a decade, maybe more, to really get to that point. My hope is within my professional lifetime, I'll also get to see it. That's what I'm working on. But I think immediate opportunities for enterprises in healthcare is really improving processes, improving the current care. So we're not going to suddenly send patients to homes or community-based clinics, although Kaiser is trying to do that, others are trying to do that. We're not going to suddenly send everybody for surgeries, although we do have ambulatory surgical centers that are trying to do it. Those are piecemeal efforts. I think most of the care will still be provided at the institutions like Stanford Hospital, right? If that's the case, next 5 years, 7 years, where are the opportunities? So phase one of AI opportunities is really improving processes, improving patient care, improving, supporting clinicians in providing appropriate care, reducing the burden on healthcare professionals, reducing the cost of those processes. Those are appropriate patient selection, making sure that patients are being triaged. There's a space called mechanical thrombectomy, a technology called mechanical thrombectomy for acute ischemic stroke. Acute ischemic stroke is a blood clot in the brain, and for the longest time there was no meaningful technology. There was you could do a clot busting drug, but it wasn't as effective. And about 8 years back, there was a major evidence that came out for mechanical thrombectomy to be a very effective tool. The problem was that most patients didn't get to it. For a long time, only 5-7% of the patients who had stroke actually got to these comprehensive stroke centers that could benefit from this technology. It was a life-saving technology. It saved society money. It allowed patients to walk home the same day. And yet, only 7%, 8% of the patients in the US were getting access to it. And suddenly you have these tools like VizAI, I'm on the advisory board in full spirit of disclosure, CureAI, which is an India-based company. The companies like that are basically taking the CT scan images and moving the patients to appropriate hospitals, saying, you have a large vessel occlusion, you gotta go get mechanical thrombectomy. This is the use of those kind of AI tools. So most of the early use cases and early positive impact from AI is going to be within the existing healthcare system. But let's not be fooled. The real impact of AI in healthcare is going to be flipping it. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions, and I would love a conversation, please. Yeah, they want to record the sound, so. CureAI, yeah. I mean, VizAI is a US-based one. CureAI is an India-based one. But so, yeah, there are a few companies, yes. Yeah, so what they're doing is they're looking at the CT scans to see whether there's a large vessels that are occluded because of the clot. So that's what they're looking at. And then once they see that there's a large vessel occlusion, they are guiding that patient to the nearest mechanical thrombectomy center.
So the state of the art, in my opinion, would be anytime you have any ailment, right, even a cough, go into the machine, do a scan, someone reads the report and says, no worries, it's a cough, go home. Yeah. Or, hey, I saw your scan, looks like pneumonia, do something else. Yeah. Or, yeah, you came in for a cough, but I saw a blood clot in your brain, go to Stanford. Now, that'd be the state of the art.
Indeed. No, absolutely. In fact, that's what I'm talking about, flipping of the, so I call it bifurcation of care. So I mentioned early on, about a few minutes back, that advanced care, advanced interventions still have to be. If you're going to open your full sternum and you're going to go in and do replumb the heart, put a new valve in there, fix your mitral valve, you still need these institutions. You still need sterile conditions with a big team and so on. But for most care, you don't actually need to come to a big hospital. So I call it bifurcation of care, where certain patients, through triage, through the kind of tools that you're talking about, absolutely spot on, and many of my mentees are working on tools like these, should actually seek care within their own communities, at home or near home, at work and in the community centers and so on. But others who actually have really significant problems, like the LVO we talked about, they should actually go to big hospitals. So spot on.
I'm actually turning it around on its head.
Mm-hmm.
The patient or the doctor doesn't know whether the patient has a small problem or a big problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the problem is. The state of the art would be there's this simple machine that's reasonably inexpensive,
Yeah.
just does a scan,
Yeah.
and then tells you, yeah, you got a cough, you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I found a bunch of other stuff that you need to worry about.
Indeed.
I'm not sure if the scans are going to get that cheap that you'd be able to do that, because a doctor's visit is probably about, what, $250 or something like that?
Yeah.
If you can get a scan down to $250 and the AI can tell us what you got, then that's going to make,
Sure.
I think, a lot of progress.
Sure. Are you an engineer, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You should talk to doctors. Doctors will never agree to that, but that's what I'm saying. I think phase one will likely not get there. My colleagues at Stanford Medicine will say, oh, I think at least the ones that hang out at Biodesign will agree, but the rest of them won't. But I think that's where ultimately, that's the holy grail. Honestly, that's where we need to go. So technology flipping the healthcare pyramid is the point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question. A lot of what you said is music to my ears. I think it all sounds wonderful, but I was just wondering, what do you think is different this time with AI as opposed to previous transformative innovations? Like, let's say, if you go to the 1960s, you have the microprocessor. Like the 90s, you have the internet. And now you have AI. So those previous times, lots of people got very excited. They said things that would basically, similar to you, we want to bring the doctors all the way back to treating the communities. They had this telehealth push in 2004 with Intel, this vPro thing. We're supposed to do all of these things, but it never happened. So what do you think is different this time? Why is it going to work?
So in fact, they say that you overestimate the impact of an innovation in the short term, and you underestimate the impact of that innovative space or innovative sort of movement in the long term. I'll give you an example of biotech. In 80s and 90s, biotech was going to cure cancer. Every time at the magazines, the front page would talk about biotech. And frankly, there was a lot of disappointment in 80s, 90s, even early aughts. But today, 80% of pipeline of drugs comes from biotech. So I think what you're talking about, semiconductors actually played a big role. The reason folks that use CGM, the reason they have continuous glucose monitors on their arms and they can track their glucose in real time and make decisions around what food they should eat and what activities they should do, is actually enabled by semiconductors. So change is happening. These are all different pieces. AI, in some ways, is an enabling piece to all of this. So if you can use AI, so what is the biggest challenge in healthcare? The biggest challenge in healthcare, there are three actually. Number one, personnel. You don't have doctors in your pocket or in your next door. The second is infrastructure. So you don't have a big surgical suite, the area where you could do procedures. That's the second one. And third is technology, right? Technology that actually, that enables a procedure, for example. The mechanical thrombectomy technology that I talked about is part of that. AI actually solves the first problem really, really well. It allows you, it doesn't solve the second problem, the infrastructure problem. You still need ORs to do the procedures. So I'm not saying that it's going to, completely undo all that has happened, but it is actually going to fix a number of problems, and it's going to create the bifurcation of care. I mean, would you want all care to be provided at home or near home? Ideally, yes, but I don't see that happening in the next 2 decades. I think a big proportion of care, where most of the people are, where most of the conditions that we deal with should be dealt with, will go home. Rest of it will remain with the hospitals.
Okay, so to distill your point, I think you mentioned this right at the beginning as well. You think of this as more of a long-term thing. You're thinking, like you said, towards the end of your career, you expect these benefits to be realized? It's
No,
not gonna be-
some benefits are happening right now. The example I provided for Cure AI and Viz AI, those are happening today. Their patients, the penetration of mechanical thrombectomy has gone up to 40%. 40% of the patients, 60% still don't, which is a problem, but 40% of the patients actually get mechanical thrombectomy if they need it. So I think you're starting to see benefits of these kind of tools already, but it's going to evolve over a period of time. And I think the thing that I always advise healthcare companies and innovators is that show what it can do today with the promise of what it can do in the future. So that sort of duality of value creation is going to be critical. I think the kinds of impacts I'm talking about will be long-term, the full sort of benefit of it. But I think some of that benefit can start accruing right away. That's what I'm pushing for. A great question. I mean, it's an important question. You know, we often, again, we overestimate what we can do with the technology now. But I think we are more savvy now today about the role of technology and hurdles in incorporating technology in healthcare.
Hi. So, it's on. Yeah. So on the one end of the spectrum, we talk about personalized medicine, right? Which I believe has a lot to do with your genetics, your parents, grandparents, uncle, aunts, whatever, right?
Yes and no. I'll come back to it.
Sure.
I smile because that's one of the major areas of contention that I have with folks that do precision medicine. But please continue.
Okay. And on the other end of the spectrum is all this patient data that gets collected about unrelated people who have different genetics, come from different backgrounds, right?
Population level data. Yes.
Yeah. What in your view is, can AI help without the right data about me to do personalized medicine for me? I mean, yes, my doctor takes my family history. That is as close as you can get to, your genetic information without any having a scientific one. So your thoughts are appreciated.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think both are equally important for nature versus nurture. In the business school, I learned this, what we are is 50% nature, 50% nurture. That was more from business perspective, but I think healthcare, there's some truth to that as well. Epigenetics does play a role. Genetics plays a role. Epigenetics plays a role. A lot of environmental factors to oncological burden that we see. And you need both. The point that I want to make very quickly, because you gave me an opportunity, thank you for that, is precision medicine is often thought of this as expensive thing that happens in global north, where you have genomics data, proteomics data, your genetic code of the individual, and then interventions or prediction of what you're at risk for and what interventions are needed, which we are not there yet. I actually think of precision medicine in a very different way. Most of you must have heard of Ayurveda. Ayurvedic medicine, when you go to an Ayurvedic practitioner and Ayurvedic practitioner takes your clinical history, gives you a cocktail of drugs that is targeted to you, that is precision medicine too. So I think we have to get outside of this mindset, mainly driven by technology and mainly driven by what we do in these elite institutions like mine, that precision medicine is far more about these new tools of genetic information and proteomic information and so on. I think we need to be able to incorporate other kinds of data. Population level data is one piece of it, because there's some correlations that you can draw from what the population data is and what the individual data is. I call it the inverse problem, which is a difficult problem, but you need longitudinal data for the patients. And I think the tools are becoming more and more affordable. So I challenge my students to think about precision medicine for global health as an enabler of better care at a lower cost. And it kind of completely throws them off because they always thought precision medicine is the most expensive care for cancer patients in the US, for example, right? So I think we need to reframe, we need to use a different framework to start thinking about some of these terms, because that'll allow us to find those opportunities in the long term that I was telling you about.
Hi, how do you marry the speed of innovation with navigating regulatory landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the longest time, regulators were 10 steps behind innovators, and especially true for innovation coming out of Silicon Valley, and FDA was always behind. Something changed about 10, 15 years back where Europe started to fall behind, because Europe had a CE mark framework and they were far more willing to let new innovations come forth as long as they were proven to be safe. They went backwards and FDA went forward. So FDA had a number of guidelines around digital health, around broad definition of digital health, but telemedicine and now AI tools. So they're rapidly coming out with frameworks, and I think there's an engagement between the innovation community and FDA. I think that's what you need. You need an ongoing, rapidly iterative conversations because even AI innovators don't know what it can do in the future. We can imagine, but we don't know what it is going to be. So I think we'll have to work together. I gave a talk last year in India where I said a regulatory framework itself has to be innovative. You have to have innovation in the regulatory framework, and you have to constantly iterate that until we get to a stage where we know what we are dealing with, because we don't right now. And I think FDA, fortunately, has been very engaged. At Stanford by Design, we have a policy program where we're training policy innovators. Similar to we teach health technology innovators, we also are training now policy innovators who are going to go work with these policymakers, regulatory agencies. And our hope is that sort of interplay between innovation community and the regulatory community will ensure that we don't have missteps in that journey.
Hey, Anurag, great discussion as always. In your opinion, what may be the biggest impact innovation use case you feel you'd like to see in the US? And when do you think, in your opinion, that may take place?
Yeah, I have a long list actually, but I'll share.
Topmost, one.
Yeah, I'll share one. Actually, Sanjeev is a longtime friend. We did PhD together in Colorado, by the way, and we talk about these topics quite a bit. So I'll share one. I think patient stratification, knowing whether I need to go to the hospital or clinic or not at home, going back to your point. Yours was a more tricorder kind of thing, but I'm saying even now, today, it's possible to do the triaging at home. It's very much possible. I think it's not happening, and I think I would like to see that use case being, because that's where a lot of cost is added. There's a lot of inconveniences added. That's where the outcomes are compromised. I think we force people to go to the clinic or to the hospital. But of course, it'll require a lot of thinking. It'll require screening and diagnosis part. It'll require intervention part. You need to create a whole solution for a set of conditions that ought to be handled at home or near home. So I would love to see that use case.
Actually, thank you. And I know I pushed you out of your comfort zone because you're more on the global health. I know you think a lot about it. So that's why I said US. Thank you,
Yeah,
Anurag.
of course.
So obviously one of the keys behind AI or Gen AI is, right, large language models or large vision models. How far do you think we are from having the right large language model for healthcare, essentially, right? We talk about individual patient, family history and all that, but think about millions of symptoms and outcomes. Yeah. Where is that?
Yeah, I think that's where we're heading. Bespoke LLMs or even SLMs for specific use cases. That's where we're ultimately going to go. Because I've tried most of the generative AI tools today, and I don't find them meaningful enough for healthcare, for the kinds of things that I just mentioned. But I think the power is there, the potential is there, the data exists. In fact, most doctors actually follow protocols and that are based in evidence. So it's just a matter of feeding your LLM with all of that. Maybe feed RWE, real world evidence. I think there's a lot of that data being collected. And so there's some investment going on in some of the AI companies in that direction.
But in terms of data collection at the hospitals, the doctors' offices, is that there yet?
It's not completely there because so some of it is already there thanks to this Epic and Cerner, which I criticized earlier. I shouldn't really, because I think some of that allowed that some of that data to be captured. It's not a complete data. It doesn't provide all that we need to train the models. But I think we are starting to see, there was a large study that Apple did in partnership with Stanford around cardiovascular disease, tens of thousands of patients. So you're starting to see those kind of tools being used to collect that data. I see a lot more of that happening, especially for oncology. That's a very high burden disease, very high economic impact. We still haven't addressed that condition meaningfully enough. I think that's where we'll probably see that first.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
clinical trials take a long, long time, right? Do you see AI helping accelerate the clinical trials? I mean, there's so many things that there's no cure for, right? Like, eczema and there's a whole bunch of other things. But I would assume if we can, speed up the clinical trials and maybe AI-based trials, maybe we can find cures faster.
Yeah, in fact,
do you
that's
see anything happening there?
Yeah, one of the most active areas for AI in health is that. Because that's a lot of money is invested in it. A lot of molecules fail. A lot of devices fail in that journey. So patient selection is a critical element of it. AI can help with that quite a bit. So there's quite a bit of work going on in that.
Yeah, that's it's my pet peeve because been in cancer for 30 years, and are there, Anurag, are there solutions right now? Because for a biotech company, that the biggest thing is not only patient recruitment, and that is patient stratification, finding the patients in the right place, but also learning from the first patient. For us, drug discovery is one thing, but reaching clinical proof of concept from a capital perspective, reaching in 10 patients versus 20 patients versus 80 patients versus that's between company being alive and dead. And this is where I feel like there may be an opportunity of one patient, learn from exactly their molecular profile, what works, doesn't work, pharmacokinetic, everything. Then the second patient, third patient, and reach CPOC faster.
100%.
Are there any solutions right now? I've been hunting and
So this is not
and
a
I don't
it's not a
find
technology.
them.
I agree with you, Sanjeev. That's actually a great opportunity. And actually, it applies also to not just evidence creation for regulatory approval, but also for marketing and so on in the future. Going back to the question that you were asking about. So I think here the challenge is the regulatory framework has not evolved fast enough. We still use randomized controlled trials. Everybody swears. How many of you love randomized controlled trials? I mean, that was the primary mechanism by which the entire healthcare interventions industry got created, like drugs and devices. So I'm sure everybody likes RCTs, but RCTs is a limiting framework. If you have a cocktail of 100 molecules, I'm making it up, but Ayurveda actually gets there, could you actually do an RCT? No, you cannot. There are nutraceuticals that have $500 billion invested in a company. There's a company that happened 20 years back that failed, $500 million, that failed because they just could not prove through RCT the efficacy of that molecule, even though the anecdotal data showed that it does. So maybe it needed an RWE framework, real world evidence framework. So I think, but real world evidence, and China is doing that, by the way. China is doing a lot of work, and as you know, but it's still US FDA and other Western regulatory agencies haven't evolved enough, and there's a lot of evolution in data science. There's tremendous amount of progress that has happened. I think we do need to think about ways of incorporating what you just said, because it's expensive and it's not needed. You don't need to have 10,000 patients for a drug molecule to be proven to be effective or not. If you can get there in 100 patients with appropriate pre-cursor data, and then maybe prove the safety and then some degree of efficacy, and then sort of dial it up as you scale the implementation of the therapy. So I have a lot of ideas on that, but of course I'm not a regulator, and nobody's going to listen to me, an innovator. So I talk about that. I 100% agree with that.
Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Anurag. I like the fact Dr. Anurag said, we overestimate short time and underestimate long time. The same successful venture capitalist told, when AGI fully developed, the farmer who never went to med school, but the surgeon went for a decade of school, will have the same intelligence level with the AGI. So whereas farmer get paid $20, surgeon gets paid $100, hundreds of $2,000. How do we make sense of it, right? So also you concluded that we are limited by our imagination. So that's where the innovation comes in the picture. Thank you for sharing your valuable and what you shared with us. I appreciate it. So next we have a panel discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce panel moderator, Divya Yaragintala. Divya is an accomplished pharmaceutical executive. She's no stranger to this AI series, and she was the closing keynote speaker last quarter with us. So please join me in welcoming Divya to the stage. The mic is already on. You just need to speak at it. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to invite my esteemed panelists up here as well. And I'll have each of them introduce themselves so you know who they are. I'm super excited about this panel because we actually have each of them representing a certain part of the ecosystem of healthcare. As you know, it's really complicated, a lot of parts to it. So super excited. I'll start with Shilpa. So Shilpa, if you can introduce yourself.
Of course, I'm really excited to be here today. Oh yeah, it's on. Thanks, Divya, for introducing me. Hi, everyone. I'm Shilpa Tanji Green. I work in a big pharma company. I'm a global head of omnichannel marketing, and I oversee about 48 countries and work in the commercial IT team. And my primary remit is to make sure that our drugs are available in all of these countries, and the physicians have the right resources and the right information they need to make the right decisions at the right time.
Thank you, Shilpa. Deda?
Hello, everyone. Neda Razavi, thank you so much for taking the time and coming here. I'm CEO of Isono Health. We are point-of-care, AI-powered and automated 3D ultrasound. We are in the business of early cancer detection with breast cancer indication first. I come from a background of over 2 decades of commercializing science, taking medical technologies from inception to market for medtech and tech bio companies, including Roche, Illumina, Natera, Medtronic, Abbott Lab, and Baxter. Can't wait to share some learning that I've gained in this space.
Thank you, Neda. Last but not the least, Parag.
Hello, everyone. I'm Parag Jain. My past 15 years of background is in biotechnology and diagnostic space. And all right, can you guys hear me now? Yes. Right. So like I was saying, my 15 years of past life has been in biotech and diagnostic space, and it gave me a deep understanding around the use of AI, especially navigating through the complexities of data, innovation, and patient care, which is what Dr. Anurag also was touching on various topics. So happy to be here, happy to be part of this Apprise conversation and share my insights.
Thank you so much. So as Dr. Myral said, right, it's all about AI is super powerful, but it's all about the use case. What are we trying to solve? And that really defines how effective it is and how fast you can really get to that ROI to show that it's actually working. So let's ask, and I'll start with Shilpa, like, what are some of the use cases? How are you using AI in your everyday workflows? And where are you seeing the most success?
Yeah, of course. So I think we started our journey in our organization, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And of course, our first focus was, as most of the companies do, employee productivity. That's where we focused on. But then from there on, we went on, and I think we recognized about 60 to 70 different use cases across the organizations, across all business units. In the research team, it's drug discovery. It's collecting vast data sets of molecular and chemical data sets and pumping it into an AI model to see if you can come up with drug discovery faster, cheaper, quicker. That was one of the things we did. And we are. I mean, that's an evolution that we'll go through. Clinical trials, that's another area where we are very heavily focused on to write the right type of patients in the right geography with the right type of demographic information to reach a clinical trial successfully. And then across the organization, say, at least in my area, I work in the commercial team. So marketing, sales, that's another big area where a lot of AI tools are used. There's one project that I'm currently leading that I can deep dive into. So what we're doing is 2 things. One is marketing concept generation. So typically marketers get into a room for 2 to 3 days with agencies and come up with marketing concepts, campaigns. How do you want to focus on a certain segment of a customer, and how do you make sure that our campaign is successful? What we're trying to do is we have an AI tool. It's built on Claude. That's your OpenAI tool. It just has information across the internet, and that's the base, the foundation of the tool. But on top of it, what we're building is pre-configured agents for the marketers to use. So say you have one agent who's a brand marketer who knows everything about our competitor data. I have another agent who is a regulatory agent, knows everything about that country's local regulatory needs. I have another agent who's probably a medical reviewer, knows everything about the medical information that needs to be pumped into the final output that comes in. I may have another agent who is just focused on market research, another agent on just focus on competitor data. So when you put all of these agents together, and based on which campaign I'm running, which type of marketing concept I want to generate, I will have a combination of these agents to come up with the right marketing concept that then spits out marketing content, then that spits out derivative content. From there on, I say, you know what? I want to run a campaign. I want to use these 5 channels, SMS, mobile, a web. Maybe I want to write an email to, I don't know, 1.5 million physicians. What kind of message should I be putting together as a marketing concept, as a marketing email that goes out to 1.5 million physicians and they will click on it, open it, read it, and take an action on it? What is the output of it? We ran a campaign, we ran it for 6 weeks, didn't work. Out of 1.5 million physicians, we saw a bounce rate of X%, we saw an open click rate of X%. Let's go back, review our content, revise our content, and do it quicker. If you do it in a room with an agency for 3 days, this typically takes 6 months. But now with an AI engine and an AI tool that we are building, it's a matter of days to do this work. So that's one of the projects I'm currently working on.
No, that's amazing. And something very similar. We used to do patient journeys. It was a 12-week project.
Oh, yeah.
And now with AI, it's like literally less than a week. And it spits it out in 3 hours, by the way.
And it's so cheaper.
So
much more cheaper.
So much faster and so much more accurate because it also goes through the discussion threads online to get a little bit more insights on the patient side.
Yeah, because it knows exactly what demographic you're going to hit and what are they expecting from you.
You probably are not wanting questions at this point, but it is so relevant because let's say things about Gilead, what you said, marketing campaigns. There's so much that is internal and specific to Gilead that you don't want to share, firewalled outside. My question to you, I've done patient journeys for cancer patients in my 30 years. It is such a sensitive topic. I wouldn't want it known from HIPAA in perspective. So how do you guys achieve this, firewalled to external usage and do it locally? For Gilead, I'd love to know, and for patient journeys, how do you do that without giving your data to say, whether it's Claude or Gemini or whoever, wherever it is? How do you do it locally?
I can answer first because I know her answer is more important. For us, we created a data lake and we created our own RAG. So we essentially were only feeding, it was a RAG, it was completely on our own infrastructure so that we had complete access to the data and control over the data. And this was done for our customers, so which meant that they would give us all of this under NDA. So we really can't release it to large language models like OpenAI or Claude or Gemini. So we would do it internally, we would create the patient journey and just give them the output of that patient journey.
I mean, forget about the rest of the world, forget about even Gilead employees. The stuff that we're building is accessible only by the 40 people who have access to it. Absolutely not. The 41st person can never go in and see anything because it's all proprietary, it's all in-house. Every agent needs to have access built out because it's all built on our private stuff. So there's...
Small biotech can do that? Build their own RAG model?
I think so, yes. It's not hard, you just need to have the right architecture on how you're going to do it. And there shouldn't be any leaks from within your system, but it's possible. And I just met with the company just yesterday. They're doing this with the SLM model, which I thought was done very innovatively, but that's a whole different topic.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Neda, same question. So you come from a different perspective, right? Your whole company is actually based on AI. So you're doing a lot with AI in different aspects. So how are you using AI?
So we use AI, 3 different ways, right? At the personal level, at our enterprise level, and building AI for our patients and future customers, which will be radiologists. But at personal level, I think it's so close to all of us, we forget we're using AI on an everyday basis. How many of you really trust AI? Raise hand. No hands? Nobody trusts AI? Okay. Yeah. trust AI with decisions? Like if you had your life in the hand of AI, would you? Okay. How many of you use Google Map and every time map tells you turn right, you turn right? All of you. So we use AI way more than we think. And I must admit, I use AI to write emails. I use AI in the past when I used to write LinkedIn posts or write articles. It would take me a whole day of thinking of what I'm going to write, how I'm going to say this word. And in marketing, we had proofreaders. Forget about any of that. It takes me 15 minutes to 30 minutes max to write the longest article I'm planning to write. Sometimes I walk and tell the AI what I want to write, and it writes it. So at personal level, we all use AI in multiple different ways. At the enterprise level, we have G Suite, we have Gemini. I'm not so excited about it yet. Don't tell Google. But our developers use AI for checking their codes. They sometimes generate some of the codes or do quality control on it. We have some different implementation on the AI. We are slim on policies. We're a small company. We have 8 people full-time and tons of consultants. But at the patient level, we use AI. We are in the business of 3D ultrasound. So we take a B-mode ultrasound image, reconstruct it using machine learning, make it look like MRI image. So we use AI at a different level. We have 6 AI products in the works. One was do segmentation of the lesions of the cancer. One will identify whether this cancer is benign or malignant. So call this classification of tumor. We have AI on risk stratification. That's what Anurag was talking about. We have AI that allows density calculation for breast tissue. Those are products that are going to come out in the market in later time. But AI for us means the next level of how can we make ultrasound or imaging faster, cheaper, more accurate to read.
Thank you, Neda. Parag, how about you?
I will take the different lens of operations and efficiencies. In my experience, what we did was we actually applied AI for lab operations. Genomic sequences that take hours and hours and weeks to get the desired result now take just less than a day's time, especially for cancer, different types of cancer predicament. So we have been using that. We have been using AI-based tools around NLP for physician and research documentation, and that has actually improved efficiency by 30%. So, I mean, we've applied not just from streamlining our lab operations to documentation, but also thinking around claims management that Dr. Mural touched on. That's one of the biggest areas, especially in healthcare, for a prenatal segment specifically, where claims management, depending upon the state you are, the kind of insurance you are, it's a very tedious process, and that takes time. And we are trying to solve that using AI. I mean, it's not quite there yet, but we have built our own RAG in the past and utilizing a lot of patient data that we have already with our existing patients to target specific states to make predictive assessment of insurance claims. So we are trying to be ahead of our own revenue from commercialization standpoint, which market to target for some of these challenging problems, especially around claims management.
So Parag, I'll stay with you for a second. So where do you see these lessons learned, right? You're scaling within healthcare. And claims is one of the most used area within AI, like so many use cases there, right? What lessons have you learned trying to scale this up?
I think the regulation part of it is very challenging because having all the laws, every state has its own claims management process. Every state has their own laws, what they cover, what they not cover, and and there are a lot of lawsuits too on top of it going on. So that does not help either. So especially around prenatal. So it's a challenging area. However, what you need is right amount of data scientists, right amount of researchers in-house who believe in this, who invest time in that, and also right amount of technological partners who can help you scale up, build those RAGs, build the cloud infrastructure to do this kind of work, because it takes time and a lot of investment from a lot of collaboration across different segments to make that happen. And right now, we have been struggling with that to find the right amount of thinking, the like-minded thinking to make that happen. So that has been a constant struggle for us.
So essentially finding domain experts along with technology experts who can bring this whole concept to life.
That's right.
Pretty much it. Shilpa, how are you?
How much time do you have? First is data. Let's start there. There is no AI model that's going to work if you don't have the right data. And that's where I think we struggle the most, is to have the right amount of data, the right type of data that can be consumed by an AI model and spit out the options and the output that you need. The second and the most challenging one is people. We are used to working in a certain way. And prompt engineering, believe it or not, is coming to be the most challenging thing for adoption in our organization, where we have these very fancy models created. You have the data. You know, as a pharmaceutical company, you can buy data. We buy a lot of data. We feed the data, and then you give it to the end user, and they don't know how to prompt. So now they want us to have prompt engineers to prompt on their behalf. So teaching someone how to use a smartphone was challenging enough a couple of years ago, but now teaching someone to use AI is much more challenging because they expect it to work like a smartphone and it doesn't. I think those are the biggest challenges we are seeing, where you can pump in millions of dollars to build certain things at the scale that we are, but you can't bring the horse to make it drink water. That's where we are right now, unfortunately.
It's so interesting, right? In elementary school, one of my teachers had said that you can learn anything as long as you ask the right questions.
Oh, they can't.
And all these years later, we're back to square one, same thing. Ask the right questions and it can really help you.
And they want help asking questions, and now they want us as in certain parts of the organization, to hire a whole set of different skill set of people just to ask questions, and that's not a thing.
And if I can add to that, Divya, I think one of the challenges I've also learned is investment in training the hospital staff. Once these tools are rolled out, that's going to be a huge challenge to train the physicians and the staff in using these kind of bots and agents. And I'm not sure how that's going to look like, but that's one of the challenges that we have faced in partnering with some of the hospital management systems.
And that's a whole different topic, right? We all need to get reskilled and retooled. These tools are at our disposal, but if we don't know how to use them, what's the point, right? So we all need that training. Neda.
Can you repeat your question one more time?
So I was asking, what are the lessons learned based on using AI?
Okay, so you addressed the regulation, data, and people challenges. Gosh, that's the hardest one you give me. Okay, so those three definitely, regulation and people and data challenges, because a lot of time you have to have access to the right data to build the AI you're looking for. I would also say one of the lessons that we are learning in our AI is we need to create our own data for generating what we are looking for. We have purchased data in the past. We have used some other algorithm that were already algorithm, but we developed our own right now, and we learned that using readily available solutions are not the right way for us. Also maintaining the costs. The cost is staggered a lot. We process a tremendous amount of data. Every scan we take is 540 frames. So we're talking about many gigabytes of data, and very quickly, before even launching the product, we know the storage, the build, and we will incur a lot of costs. We don't have the talent problem. We are a startup, so we get a lot of people want to come to work with us, and we are also very slim, and we manage that part well. But if you ask about AI challenge overall outside our enterprise, I would say one of the challenges is the navigating the unknown and what entails, who, how these data are managed, how this is regulated, who is, really taking the lead of understanding what that data is used for. That would, I would say, in the broader, outside our enterprise, would be another challenge that, how would you trust the AI generated data? I would say that would be the outside our organization.
Thank you so much. So if you can start this time, Neda, talk about what do you see in the future? What are some of the trends you're excited about? What would you want AI to be for you and the rest of the healthcare?
For the rest of the healthcare, I mean, right now, even though we have made a lot of progress with the AI, we still have a lot of data silos, and we have a lot of data interoperability problems. My hope is in future we have data agents that are not necessarily a threat to a particular health system data, but allows the patient to take control of their own data, have access to their data. I was in genomic space, and one of our hope was that precision medicine is going to give us that ability, but we quickly learned that's not the case. We need way more than that to be owner of our own data. I really like the AI to shift the table and give the patients, the caregivers, us individuals, a lot more power than the health systems and the payers, which I think we are on the right path.
Shilpa.
That's a very broad question when you say healthcare. So I'm going to stick to my area, which is pharmaceuticals. It's easier for me to deal with that. I think in the next decade, I would say predictive analysis. I think that's predictive data to predict a kind of disease you may have, or preventative measures to avoid a disease, or even any health events, or to avoid those health events. Drug discovery, I think drug molecules will be discovered much more faster, cheaper, easier to tackle with these complex diseases that we have in society today. And I think health equity, I think that's the other big area, right? At least for us, it's one of the biggest area where we don't think that patients get the access that they need in the world. And I think health equity and getting access to certain kinds of medications on time for all patients around the world, I think that'll be really much more easier to do once we tackle this whole inventory supply chain problem that we currently have with access of drugs.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too, right? Like when we talk about AI should be able to predict, it's going to be a huge knowledge graph, right? Assuming we map all the symptoms to all the possible diseases for it to happen. So again, it goes back to the data. How do we?
It does, but I think in the next 10 years, we will collect enough, our Apple Watches will collect enough data and pump it into a common system where we will achieve singularity and we will have all of this data in one place and they'll be able to predict things for us.
Hopefully, Parag.
I mean, I will use an example. I think there was somebody who asked the question, where is the innovation happening? I mean, there are AI solutions out there now that are heavily investing in analyzing your breath. So by the analysis of breath, they can detect whether you have COVID or flu, things like that. So there's a lot of personalized care that is happening. And for me, I think one area that I feel we would all see some changes is personalized care in terms of appointments. If that problem can be solved quickly, where it takes you, even at an urgent care, 2 hours, 3 hours, from start to finish for the whole experience, if that can be tailored down to minutes, I think that will be phenomenal for everyone. So that can still happen with agents. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be virtual. We have technology and we have solutions out there, but it is still not personalized enough where it knows about your family history, your environmental circumstances, your genomic data, so lifestyle choices. So all that when you combine with data, I think you can get a very well-defined, tailored, personalized care with humanoids. So to me, I think that's where I see a good future, where it doesn't have to be a human to give you a treatment plan. It could be a humanoid as well.
Yeah, that can be the first level, right? Tier 1. Triage is done by AI, and then you get to the human. Well, thank you so much for all of our panelists. This was, I hope, really good for all of you. We'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists.
I'm curious. I know we're talking about AI in healthcare systems, but I'm going to ask the counter question. Where do you see AI being overkill right now?
I can tell you something, and this was something I overheard in one of my coffee meetings at JPM. Somebody else was pitching for an AI company, and the other person was saying, you need to have AI, and you should have a website with .ai. And I'm like, seriously? And I spoke to 5 different people, and they said, yes. Right now, to pitch your company, you have to show you're using AI someplace. And sometimes it goes back to use case. Like, are you solving something with AI? Or are you just saying you are an AI company for the sake of being an AI company? So you can push it through. And I think that's where we need to be very curious in asking these people, and also be judicious when you're trying to pitch your company to say, how are you actually using that AI? Because right now, everybody wants to be on that bandwagon.
Just don't follow the hype. I know there's a lot of hype on AI, but there's difference between AI and automation and the old school process engineering. We need to distinguish between what's a proper process and process automation versus AI. And I think people are getting confused with those two.
All right, I'm just going to ask the question. So use the mic, please. Thanks. I'm going to sound almost a bit like a broken record because this kind of follows on from a previous question I asked to our friend. So this is kind of directed more towards Nida because what you're doing is actually customer facing. And I mentioned before, what do you think is different this time around? So you're solving that challenge because you're actually putting AI in the hands of clinicians, right? I want to give you an example. So you mentioned that you're doing modality translation. And I know that that can be quite a touchy subject for physicians. This is something that I've worked on. And some people go apoplectic over it. They say, well, you absolutely won't get the signal that you expect in this modality because the tissue doesn't react in the same way. You're just making something look like an MRI, for example. But then you get people who are on the other side of that. They think, no, this is useful. So from your point of view, what does this resistance look like? Is it just a very small minority? And how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think these skeptics are going to just die out, or do you have to push a little?
No, skeptics is going to get more and worse. Let me give you context. The clinicians we deal with are mostly radiologists. They are on average sued every 7 years. And the breast radiologists top that number. They're sued every 4 years. The reason for it is they're using mammo machines that are X-ray based. And X-ray is known and is proven that misses breast cancer detection in dense breast tissue, which is half a population in the US. So the solution for that is either you send the patient to MRI or ultrasound. So I give you this context to tell you we have a starting point. What we need to prove is at the number of patient studies we are doing, how much better than existing technology we're doing. You're correct, if we were to just use our 510K and go to market, the resistance is going to be overwhelming. But we have 2 larger studies starting, one 800 patient across multiple segments of the patient population, across multiple sites, which I will announce in the future, and another study of 2,500 patients, 2,000 in Uganda, 500 in Nashville, where we are collecting all of these longitudinal data. We compare MRI, mammo, and our own device images to come up with validation of our AI. So I take it that one of the challenges of our healthcare innovation that was not mentioned here, the burden of proof is on an innovator. And we are constantly pressed and pushed to raise funds to do the next thing. But because the clinicians, for the right reason, want to see a proof of how can I trust your data. And that's what we will do to prove it. So we have already created our data algorithm. We have already created our AI, but we got to prove it and validate it with the 3,200 patient study that I just mentioned.
Ned, I was curious. So clearly, you all are generating a lot of images, right? This is a slightly tangential question, but I think it's important. You all are generating a lot of images, right, for the breast cancer detection. Do you all worry about security of those image files, whether there's any embedded malware in there that you all might need to screen for?
We have a lot of security measures in place, and we also don't collect. We are under HIPAA regulation, and we don't collect patient information in our researches. But there's a lot of protection that we put in place.
I mean, I can add to that. I think it's a very large, broader question around security of sensitive healthcare data. And I think you will see a lot of standardization around following ISO 27001 principles around data security, especially with healthcare companies, which were not the case before. So more and more healthcare companies are now investing in having more sophisticated GRC platforms and 27001 compliance across the board.
I think I'll go next. By the way, I appreciate all your input, your experiences, and sharing your experiences with all of us. I come from a late stage biotech. We just recently built an AI-based capsid, so we are a gene therapy platform, and we are into ophthalmology, pulmonology, and cardiology. The experience that I'm going to share, and then I have a question after that. So we are, by the way, a very small biotech company from Emeryville. The experiences that we have gone through is the mounting cost that we are dealing with AI. So as I mentioned, right, we built the capsid, which was the first AI based capsid that we built. The cost went from somewhere around $200,000 to close to $3 million in less than 4 months. Later side, we have to bring in more senior scientists to make sure that the models, which is actually giving us the data, is accurate data that we can rely on. Plus all the security controls that you just mentioned. You come from big pharmaceutical companies and have so much experience. You have your own company, by the way, so congratulations on that. How are you dealing with these costs, right? And how are you looking at the ROI overall? Where do you see like the budgets, right? For me, after spending $3 million already, there is a word that stopped, this work for now, because we come from small biotech world. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
So the investments is one thing and ROI is another thing. For you to get investments and to show ROI, it's a long game and it's a long con. I have to tell you that. Doesn't matter how small or big company you are, for you to prove in our industry, to prove that you must invest in AI is always going to be a difficult challenge. What you could do is have small wins, but again, you will have to have those small POCs, small pilots to show what you can achieve. But it is not going to happen. I mean, we invest a lot, but I don't think we're going to see any returns for the next 5 years. There might be small POCs, you will have small wins, but if you want to scale it enterprise-wide, 38 countries, big pharma is the same problem as a small company with small funding. The scale to the funding needed to scale is still going to be the same problem. Not for the next 5 years. I don't think we can solve that.
I can add to that. I think it's a constant problem a CIO also has to face to justify the investments in AI these days. So what has worked for me in my past experience has been like start small. Pick a smallest problem that you think can make a big dent and prove the investment and ROI that scaling that problem can definitely make a dent in the large scale revenue stream. That's the pitch, but yeah, that takes time. So you got to find the right problem that you can deliver within, like, say, 6 to 9 months.
And I think it goes back to what Dr. Mairal was saying, right? There are so many low-hanging fruits, process improvements, workflow improvements that you can show the proof of concept on how much you can improve, because those are easy to show numbers, right? Because that's what your board is looking for. And that way you can sell on the AI aspect. And then you can say, by solving this problem, I'll actually save, X, Y, and Z. Based on, you can kind of model that off of that. So attack the small hanging fruit for sure. And process improvements are like the easiest. That's how we started. That's how we were able to sell it and say we need more investment, because we were able to solve very basic stuff. It's like across industry. It wasn't even healthcare specific, but it was a big problem for us. And we could show the savings there. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all your great advice and experiences.
Let's give a round of applause to Divya, our moderator, and the panelists. Thank you so much. Our signature AI series is a quarterly event dedicated to exploring the evolving impact AI across the industry. Today, we saw the AI in healthcare. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who will offer a sneak peek into our upcoming event in May. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Nikhil Seth, CIO at Boyd. With a deep expertise in technology, business strategy, leadership, and innovation, Nikki brings a valuable insights into how AI is transforming manufacturing industry. Please join me in welcoming Nikhil Seth to the stage.
Hey, good evening, everybody. As I said, my name is Nikhil Sood, and I'm the last guy standing between you. Oh, sorry. And I'm the last guy standing between you and a fantastic dinner, so I'll try to keep this short, right? So, I'm CIO at Boyd Corporation. I've been there about 6 years. Any of you probably haven't heard of this company. So let me just dive right into it. So Boyd is it's a global company. It's actually about 100 years old, believe it or not. Founded in the Bay Area in the 1920s. If I remember right, making zippers for Levi jeans. That was our first manufacturing process, and then it's kind of morphed from there. Completely stopped that business, did other things, but right now we're pretty much in every sector you can think of. We probably don't buy anything build anything you buy directly, but we go into a lot of products that you do buy, from cell phones to, in this case, we've got a pretty significant medical business around cooling MRI systems, as well as the other side of our business was just stick to skin. Somebody mentioned CGM applications. So we've got a couple of our largest customers are, we assemble the device, but we also make the adhesive pads that the CGM sticks to your skin with. So it's interesting. We have over 40 manufacturing locations globally, about almost 8,000 employees now. So that's a little bit about Boyd. Just don't have to get into this, but pretty much Northern Hemisphere. I hate it when they call us a global company. We're a Northern Hemisphere company. So we talked a lot about AI in the healthcare space, and it's all exciting stuff, right? We're a little more boring, a little more old school industry, industrial manufacturing. And how does AI play in this space? And that's the question that our board asks us. By the way, we are a private equity-owned company, so we're literally a 100-year-old startup. So the board asks, "Hey, what are you doing about AI?" I'm like, "What do you want me to do about AI?" Right? So this is it's an interesting dichotomy, because I'm both skeptical and excited about AI and what it can do to our business. Is that possible? Do other people feel the same way? Right? Now, being in what do you call an old school company or a brick and mortar company, there's several obstacles to this, and we'll get into that a little bit. But for me, when I start, and this is just my digesting of the whole process, right? I've been 35 years in IT, about 30 years of those in manufacturing, different kinds of manufacturing companies. So. I always say I know more about manufacturing than I do about IT right now. So, But you know, what is AI? And this is maybe a little basic for you. This is like I said, my way of processing it or digesting it. But right now, it's such a buzzword that almost any data-driven activity is called AI, right? And it's like that. Well, I've been doing this for 40 years. What are you calling this AI? Why is this a new age phenomenon? But so I've kind of broken it down. We'll get into that a little bit. But you know, the manufacturing industry honestly has been, I say a leader and laggard, but it's been usually an accidental leader and a habitual laggard when it comes to adoption of new technologies. And that's both, you know, it's born of certain reasons and certain drivers. And it's sometimes very frustrating when I talk to my peers in other industries and hear about the stuff they're doing and the benefits they're getting from that. And I'm like, okay, I'm about 10, 15 years behind you, but I'll get there someday, right? And then there's the dependence, I would say almost an overly dependent on a manufacturing company on ERP systems. I mean, it is the lifeblood of an ERP company. It runs the business. But then you're so dependent on it, so it does enable certain things, but it's also a hindrance because now you're reliant on somebody else to come up with technological innovations for you, and you have to wait for them, and then you take what they give you without proliferating bolt-on tools and custom tools and things like that. So going back to what is AI? When I started to break it down, there's three broad categories, right? There's the algorithmic intelligence, which some people, even today, there are people who call that, oh, that's AI, because I wrote a report or I wrote a dashboard that does this and it tells you what you did. Well, yeah, that's been around forever, right? So that's just linear data analytics. The other one, and I think that came up, was the predictive intelligence. Okay, based on history, what does the future look like, right? And that is technically in the manufacturing industry, that's typically been the realm of statistical modeling, or you hire a statistician to do the stuff. Things like demand forecasting and inventory planning, supply planning, all those things have been done for at least 25 years that I can think of, and there are probably people who are doing it before that. And then you get to generative intelligence, right, which is what I think maybe is the true innovation, the true step forward we've taken in this space, and we'll get into that a little bit. From a use cases perspective, again, manufacturing companies, I mean, can everyone hear me? I seem to be fading in and out. We mentioned the algorithmic, right? It's your traditional reporting analytics platforms. It's, most of it is built into ERP systems. Some you need bolt-ons. They've been recent, when I say recent, I mean 15 years or so innovations around data lakes and data warehouses and BI tools, whether it's Power BI or Tableau or what have you, that makes it easier to consume, but it's been around a little while. We talked a little bit about predictive intelligence. This is where, based on what's my historical sales look like, so I can forecast my demand going forward. So I can put that in the system and I can start ordering product and I can start creating, future financial results or reports based on what I think is going to happen. Again, it's a statistical model. Either build it yourself or you get it externally. The Gen AI side, right? So now there's a couple of things here. Number one, and I'm just saying this is table stakes, right? Whatever can be used in other companies for code generation, be it, or content generation, marketing content generation, customer service, help desk, your contact center, anything you can use AI, it applies to every industry, so that's a given. So what are the use cases that at least I see standing right now for true generative AI in a manufacturing environment? And the one thing that comes to mind, I'm sure that, there are more than this, but I didn't want to bore everyone with that. So one thing that I do come to is, the one challenge every manufacturing company faces, they make a product, it goes out in the field, and 2 years later it fails. And then there's this whole process, you got to, why did it fail? And anyone familiar with the automotive world, there's something called a recall, and we get impacted by that a lot, right? Can't go into specifics, but we almost lost our company because of a recall, not in automotive, but in another space. But where can AI help in analyzing some of that testing data to catch that, testing and field data, catch that issue sooner, faster, and also do proactive engineering to fix that issue. So that's something that I think is going to be a really important use case for, especially for high volume manufacturing companies. The ultimate generative AI is the AI makes your products. That's what I call Skynet. That honestly, who's a Terminator fan here? That's the most scary thing about Terminator for me. Forget the robots. It's the machines building machines and knowing what machines to build and what they need to do. That is the most scary part of it, right? So I kind of put it in as a joke. We're not quite ready for Skynet yet. But again, as I said, we are dependent on the ERP system. So we are talking to our providers, be it Oracle or Microsoft or SAP or whoever. What are they building into their platforms that we can just leverage right out of the box, and help that way. I think actually a lot of my points already got covered in the previous section, so I'm still going to talk about it. The one thing I do, I talk to a lot of my peers in the manufacturing and some non-manufacturing as well about AI. What are we doing with this? Where are we going with this? And 80 to 90% come back with this, the data dilemma. So historically, the manufacturing industry has been all about cost, right? Because it's margins. We're talking single-digit gross margins. Maybe if you're hitting 20, 25, you're doing really good, especially for a parts manufacturing company. So every dollar that you spend in technology better have an ROI. And I think you asked that question too on ROI, right? Our return is 18 months. If it can't pay for itself in 18 months, I'm not spending it. And that's a real tough hurdle to cross when I think Neda said, 5 years don't expect, or Shilpa, one of them said, 5 years don't expect any return on that. And how do I even get started? So I can answer your question a little different way too, is I sneak it in, right? You find you find a business need, get a use case for it. Don't say AI, but you sneak it in. And then afterwards you say, by the way, I used AI on this, and here's how I can use this even further, right? So, and it's not just AI. We did that with earlier technologies as they evolved as well. So it has been cost focused. But what is the problem with data? It's the old cliche, which I've been hearing my whole career: garbage in, garbage out. Everyone's heard that. Good data leads to artificial intelligence, good intelligence. Bad data leads to a real mess. It's not artificial anymore. It is real, because the impact of bad data in this AI world, especially in this generative AI world, where you're making decisions based on that without human intervention or with minimal human intervention, think about the impact that it could have. So the quality of the data is one thing. The granularity is another one. I can give you an example on this. To run an ERP system or to run purchasing, procurement, I just need the supplier's part number, right, and a description. Everything else is with the supplier. So now we buy, half our business is a materials business. So we buy from vendors like 3M and Avery and stuff, all kinds of adhesives and foams and things like that. We know the part number. Everything else is with the supplier. So, again, use case, right? Someone came to us and said, hey, we need to find out where common materials are used in these supplier part numbers, what materials they're using. I'm like, we don't store that in our ERP system, right? So that granularity is missing. So this is where we said we used AI. It was actually eye-opening. We put that vendor part number into the AI tool, and it actually fetched everything back for us. And we were able to build a database, and we actually shouldn't say able to, we are in the process of building a database that is going to be the most detailed commodity management database this companies or any company I've worked with has ever had, all using AI. So there are use cases for that, right? So that's just one example. So I would still say in the manufacturing space, it's still very, very early days. We are 5 to 10 years behind, but we will catch up. Okay. I'll finish with one last thing. We talked about AI for manufacturing. And it'll be remiss of me not to put in a plug here I'm going to talk a little bit about manufacturing for AI. So what the AI boom has done is it's created such a an uproar. It's such a mega trend. Now everyone wants AI, whether they need it or not, like it or not, as someone already mentioned before, you've got to have You got to have AI in your platform to be able to sell your company, sell your product, sell whatever it is, right? But what has that done to actually the infrastructure that's needed for AI? And has anyone gone into a data center running a full AI rack? I'm just curious. Full disclosure, I have not either, so that's not the thing. But I've seen enough videos and things. Sorry, somebody put their hand up. Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay, perfect. It blew my mind to know how much heat a chip, an NVIDIA chip, for example, a GPU AI processor, generates. It actually generates the same amount of, and that's the current generation, same amount of heat as a ceramic cooktop. You can cook food on a chip. And that's not exaggeration. You can cook food on a chip like that. Here's the other part of it. Within less than 2 seconds, sometimes milliseconds, that amount of heat will actually burn the silicon. That chip will be unusable in less than 2 seconds. So it needs constant cooling. So it needs two things: power, what was the latest? 35% of power is going to be used by data centers across the US, right? But all that power, the unintended consequence of that power is heat generation. So there is this big demand for cooling solutions in that space. And I'm happy to say Boyd is actually one of the leaders in that space. We've recently, about 6 months ago, partnered with NVIDIA. So we're co-marketing our cooling solutions. So these are, cooling went from the old, remember the heat sinks with the little aluminum pieces with the fins popping up, from that to like plates with heat pipes to liquid running to them, and now it's more, you need a chiller. So our system really is a chiller that pumps cooled coolant through a whole loop that goes through all the chips and comes back and just does this constantly. And it's a huge demand. And in fact, it's so big, we can't keep up with it. People are taking orders, not just us, companies, a year and a half, 2 years out. And every company that we know, the big guys, the hosting platforms, who they are, the Googles, the Azures, those guys. And the tier down from there, the Metas, the Oracles, everyone is building out data centers. And this thing is just amazing. So just to wrap it up here, whether we use AI, what are use cases for AI, yet to be seen, but keep the boom going because my future depends on it. So thank you guys. Any questions? Are we out of time?
One question from the floor. Anybody have one question?
Admittedly, this isn't necessarily a question. It's more of a high five. Thank you for bringing up how much heat and energy AI generates. It's a big concern, and I think it needs to be something that's discussed more often and more openly, because not a lot of people who, say for myself or others, who use AI on a regular basis are fully aware of how much heat and how much demand AI is going to impact our everyday lives and future generations in terms of the energy usage that it takes. So thank you for being at the forefront of that.
No, thank you for that comment. And actually, who heard about DeepSeek that came out, 3 weeks ago, right? It caused the stocks of many companies, including the ones I'm talking about that provide these cooling solutions, to tank. You know why? Not only they were faster and stuff, that's okay. They consumed less than 10%, supposedly. Again, this is unvalidated data. Consumed supposedly less than 10% of the energy to do the same transactions that ChatGPT did. And everyone is saying, okay, is this like a disruptor? Is this technology a disruptor? Now, there's been a lot of cross-checking and cynicism on that. All that's got to come out. But that was the impact that one search that they did that did it with 10% energy is impacting the market already. Because hey, if there's another innovator out there who can do this with less power, less heat, all of that stuff, that's really the phase 2 of this revolution, really. Okay. I think it's on.
Okay. It was great to see the presentation. Brilliant job, by the way. It's good to see that this future of technology still relies on the old physics and engineering to be sustainable. And it's important kind of lesson for all of us that this is really the blend of the new and the old. I don't want to call it old, but more traditional fields of science and engineering. I think that interaction is critical. And the other comment I quickly wanted to make is that you definitely want the boom to continue to go because more you use AI, but also more use of more AI actually creates opportunities for you. So just
Absolutely. That was kind of the point of the last slide was, hey, it's good for us. It's good for business. All right, thank you guys. Enjoy your dinner.
A round of applause, Nikhil. So we are a couple of minutes away before we close formal session. Let me invite my colleague, Prashant.
Thanks, Nixon. Dr. Anurag, I mean, these are the kind of interactions and conversations that get me in trouble at home. My wife is a doctor, and there is no way I can talk about all this AI stuff and what you were mentioning earlier. But again, thanks for kicking it off, and the insights were amazing, and especially the position where you are, your perspective is very different, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. And all the panel members, I think it was great, and especially each of you come from a different, setting and, that perspective, that all the conversations, all the questions that you answered, thank you so much for all of that. I know it took a lot of time and everything, so thank you so much. And finally, Nikhil, so now I know who to blame for all the zipper problems I had in my life, but all jokes apart, but thank you again. I think it was a perfect setting for, what is yet to come, for the next sessions that we have. Is on manufacturing, AI in manufacturing, and we really are lining up some of the panels, amazing panels that's going to come up. Thanks for setting that up as well. So again, last but not least, Divya, thank you so much for moderating and keeping everyone on track with everything, and of course all the behind-the-scenes help that you have had, with our team. Thank you so much for all of that. And before ending and before stepping back into dinner, I just have one 2-minute pitch from our friend, Mr. Manish Modi. If you can come over. He's a veteran of Oracle, and he wants to talk a few things about, Vida ML, a new startup. It's all yours.
Hey, Prashant, thank you so much. Prashant, thank you so much. Yeah, and thanks for the couple of minutes. I'm going to keep it short because I know I'm between you and dinner. So I was with Oracle for 33 years. Building some of the manufacturing systems that Boyd and other manufacturing companies use. But right now I'm with a startup called Vida ML. Vida stands for life in Spanish, and ML for machine learning. And the whole idea is to actually provide machine learning and AI intelligence on all the EHR information so that you can have better outcomes for the patients around medication adherence, care management, reducing the recurrence of the patient having to come back to the hospital or to the doctor's office. So it's vidaml.com, not vidaml.ai. Maybe we should have that domain name as well. So if you get a chance, look it up. And we have Ravi here from the company and Nalini from the company. So if you get a chance, please feel free to interact with them. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So in closing note, please enjoy dinner. Engage in a great conversation, expand your network, make some friends tonight before you go home, and have a fantastic evening. Thank you all for joining us today.